Okay, everyone. First off, I do have two winners. So, see, that quieted everyone down. I have two for doing the surveys. You're going to get a $50 Amazon gift card emailed to you just for filling out the surveys, and I'll pull two more at the end of the day. Preston Miles, are you in here? Okay. My team's going to email you a $50 gift card. Thanks for doing that. And Daniel Martinez. Daniel Martinez, are you in here? He doesn't even, this is one you don't have to be present to win. So, also, I apologize. I know I can be annoying over when I'm making several announcements that lunch is being served. I kind of got lectured by someone, so I'm sorry. I'm just trying to keep the show on time, so I apologize if I was annoying over there. But look, I got everyone back in here in our room full, so I didn't want anyone to miss lunch because once the keynote starts, there is a chance that you might not be able to find a seat in here. So I was just trying to get everyone over. So I am very excited about our keynote speaker today. I have Jacob Combs. He's the VP of CyberSecurity, the CISO, and Enterprise and Product Security Governance at Tandem Diabetes Care. A little bit about Jacob. The rapid evolution of AI and quantum computing is reshaping security landscape. I'm sorry. I just messed up. Sorry about that. What he is going to speak on today is what I just said, but I'm going to tell you about him. I'm sorry. Gosh, I'm sorry. First of all, how many have been to this event in the past? How many have watched this event virtually and this is your first time in person? A few? Did I see a few? Okay, well, welcome back to everyone that is a repeat attendee. We're glad you're back, and welcome to all of our new attendees. I'm not usually this offbeat when I'm introducing our keynote, but Jacob is, like I said, the CISO and Product Security leader at Tandem Diabetes Care with extensive expertise in medical device security, regulatory compliance, and AI-driven cybersecurity solutions with a background spanning telecommunications, defense healthcare, financial services, and manufacturing. He has built and led security programs that balance innovation, risk management, and regulatory alignment. He is also the founder of a cybersecurity advisory firm and a recognized thought leader in product security, AI governance, and quantum resistance architects. Today, he's going to speak on the future of product security, AI, quantum computing, and evolving threat landscape. That was a tongue twister, so let's welcome Jacob Combs to the stage.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. So thank you, Kim, for that warm welcome. The topic here today is about AI and quantum computing and kind of how it's going to impact our world in the next few years. It's quite an ambitious title, I'll admit, and quite an ambitious subject. Please don't expect that I'll have all the answers. What I want to do today is really challenge how you all think about the current threats and we face and how AI and quantum are going to shift that and kind of give you a little bit of a framework and some things to think about on your own organizations as we move forward. So we'll walk through again. Kim kind of said it. I do want to talk about the threats, but I also want to talk about the opportunities, right? There's a lot of opportunities for us as security professionals to take on these tools and use them to our advantage, I'll say. So and after that, we'll go through a few practical steps you can take, and we'll have some walk away and time for some questions at the end. I cannot promise that I can answer all of them, but I promise I will get back to you if you want to reach out to me afterwards. Sound good? All right. As Kim said, my name is Jacob Combs. I'm the CISO and Product Security Leader at Tandem Diabetes Care. We're based here in Southern California. I've been not really in the industry, but I've been in IT and software development for at least the past 20 years. So a balance and mix of both of those have given me what I call, I think, a really unique perspective on how I do security now. So I've been in the security space for a little over 10 years, and really as a leader of that in the past 6. And I think my background in IT and software has given me this focus, which I've now found a purpose, like a real area that I like, which is called product security. And it's really balanced, and it's a security that goes along with the business, the way I like to put it. So we're not just, putting security on laptops and, protecting the assets and dealing with users. We're also making sure that our business can move forward, move into new riskier areas, and take advantage of some of the advantages security does give you going into different spaces. And so I actually find I like a lot of that space, but a lot of what I talk about today will be around any kind of risk that also impact enterprises as well and the businesses we support. So let's start with the big picture. So AI and quantum computing are really big things, really a lot of uncertainty floating around here. But what I'm starting to see especially is that they're really going to redefine how products are built, secured, and managed, right? It's going to really change the way we actually deal with building products. We deal with rolling out enterprise solutions. And the way we think about things has to change. And the traditional security models we've used and we've all built our careers around are not going to be sufficient to support that into the future. I'm going to highlight this a few times, that we really have to start thinking differently about how we protect businesses, what risk really means, and how it's impacted by these 2 new technologies coming into place. There is a lot, and we'll cover a bit of this as we go forward. The second big topic that I'll kind of talk a lot about today, which is really probably the key message I want you all to walk away with, is that it's no longer the case that you can be just a defender, right? And even if you are on a red team, you're kind of doing one aspect of it. You have to be a defender, but you also have to innovate. There's going to be a lot of changes occurring, a lot of tools that are coming in place, a lot of new ways of thinking about what risk really means, and you have to be able to keep up with that. And I'll give one of my takeaways is about this, really, how are you going to get your security teams and yourself to kind of keep up with this changing landscape. And the risk of this is starting, as this kind of shifts and changes. If anyone's paying attention, the last 6 months of just AI has been just dramatic changes. Like something comes out every single month. There's a new technology or a new way of doing things that's like something everyone talks about. And what I'm starting to see is that if you are not necessarily keeping up with all of it, but starting to think about how your organization will have to defend or protect these kind of technologies, you really risk falling behind as a business and frankly becoming a target for many organizations. So talking about the risks of AI, and I'm sure you've all started thinking about this, but I tried to boil it down as best I could. It will give attackers more power to come after us, right, if we don't take the right steps. The first is enhanced deception, right? The days of seeing the misspelled phishing email from the Prince of Nigeria, or the really obvious red flags in your emails is over, right? The emails they can craft with AI are way better. They can mimic your writing, mimic your style, and not to mention things like deep fakes or the audio messages that are coming out now. These capabilities are moving very quickly and very rapidly and are already starting to be used to attack organizations. The second is operational scalability, and this is where the rubber starts to meet the road for me, because now the people who were not really so talented or kind of clumsy or not really able to orchestrate an attack can do it with the tooling that's out there, right? They're really going to be able to take advantage of some of the complexity and some of the skill that these larger attackers have through the use of AI. If anyone saw the recent attack against Bybit, where they lost $1.4 billion in Ethereum, right? If you actually go back and look at how that attack went down, it was extraordinarily sophisticated, very orchestrated and operational, and they made all these right connections in the right places. That kind of skill maxed with AI is going to be something we're not going to be prepared for. So I just wanted to point that out. The next one is precision targeting. So this is where AI can go through vast amounts of data and really help them figure out how to attack a company, finding all the players that work there, how they operate, where they've been, who's connected, all the data you can find online about it, doing a lot of the OSN work for you, and figuring out how to attack the company directly, right? And that Bybit example I gave is kind of how that's going to play out, I think, is that there'll be much more precision targeted attacks. Like the example I think we can all think about now is third-party risk, right? They know they can easily find out what kind of third parties you're using, attack those as a way into your system, and then take advantage of your business from there. And then the last one, and this is something I'm hoping a lot of the vendors in this place are starting to think about as well, is this dynamic adaptation. So as they run into roadblocks, they'll be able to use AI to figure out ways around it, or look for new vulnerabilities, or look for new paths into your networks and into your systems. And that will be their ability to pivot and shift as they're on the attack is something we need to be ready for, right? And that's kind of the segue into the next slide, which is talking about how we're starting to think about this a bit more, right? A lot of my work, because I do focus a lot on product security, and that's one of my specialties, a lot of the basis for that work is around threat modeling. We really have to think about how our products are built and how they're secured and how to implement that into our development processes. But it actually works in almost any scenario with security. And these are the kind of three things I want you to take away with how this threat model will change. One is that AI is making the hard things easy. So the moats you may have had before, or the protections, or this is too complex, or the difficulties are going to be kind of fading away as these tools get more capable and the people who use them get more capable. The second one, which is, I know we've had almost like an epidemic of third-party risk lately, and trying to keep up with that as it stands currently is one of the bigger challenges I think most people face. How do you manage all your vendors and how they change within the company, the use within the company, and then they change their terms of service all of a sudden? How do you keep track of all this? With AI, I still think we're figuring out what the actual supply chain here is. Right? Where is this data? How has this system been built? Who's managing it? Where are my prompts going? How is my data being used in other ways? We don't even know the real risk around this yet. And we're starting to think about it, and actually I've been tasked at my company to sort of think about this as well, and I'm still kind of bleeding from my brain trying to figure out how to do this, right? And how to implement AI safely at the company or also protect the models we're starting to use. And then the last one is a whole new class of vulnerabilities. So we're not used to having these very capable third-party systems just sitting there, not knowing how they're going to respond, not knowing how they're, if somebody's poisoning the data by data poisoning, or if somebody's trying to use inference to attack our system. We don't really know and understand all the vulnerabilities yet, and this novel class is still being kind of understood. I'd be interested to hear if anyone thought of any when we get to the questions. So the good thing is, though, is that AI is not just a threat, but it's also a tool, like I mentioned earlier. And so it can become a force multiplier for your teams or for yourselves, right? The big key for me is the productivity and consistency side, right? Like I said before with the attacker, you can scan vast amounts of data, pull a lot of disparate information together, and help you make decisions and make determinations. One of the tools we've been using in our product that helps us with kind of field issues is Datadog, and they're like an application logging mechanism to help you troubleshoot. But they're starting to use AI to pull a lot of data together, making our job much, much easier. The same here with security. It can be much easier. You can do a lot more research and make yourself more productive, and also get very consistent results if used properly. High power detection and response. We're already seeing a lot of the incident response and detection companies build AI into their products, but really it can be exponentially larger if using AI to help you make a lot of decisions, or I think of it SOAR, but the next level, like the next iteration of a SOAR product. And then the last one, this is maybe a little bit, but this is where I think I work in a lot of smaller teams, and so we rely on our business and our partners across the business to help us with security a lot, and we put a lot of the onus back on them. And being able to have an AI that gives them the answers, or they can use it to check their situation, or you can use it to ask a question about what they're doing, would go a long way in helping us, not really have to deal with them as much when they can get this sort of support. And that's really, I think in the beginning, where we're trying to look is actually that empowering developers and user side. So now I want to shift gears here a bit. So this is where it gets a little bit more murky and a little bit farther out into the future, right? Because I mean, there has been some changes in quantum happening more recently, but it's still a little bit away. But I think it's important to talk about it a bit now. Because it will have a significant impact on the business when it does come into place. And all of the ways we'll have to do to deal with this will be long-running and difficult to do. And so I want to give a short primer. I'm by no means a physicist here, and I cannot explain this in depth. There's a link at the end that you can go to really get an in-depth understanding of quantum computing, and good luck. But what I will say is that the difference between a classical computer and a quantum computer is this, at the base level, is this idea from bits to qubits. And bits, typical zeros and ones, on, off, that's how a computer typically works. And now in quantum computing, you're going to have 0, you'll have 1, and you'll have this mind-bending concept of both, where it can be both at the same time. And don't ask me to explain, please, but it's the concept there is called superposition. And it's actually it sounds like there's only one more bit in place, but it actually exponentially creates more power by the use of this bit. There's a lot more detail into that, so please go research on your own if you're interested. But what problems we used to take for much longer to solve in the past, like RSA encryption, are going to take maybe thousands or to billions of years to actually compute that, will now be done in minutes or even hours, right, depending on the key length. And the quote I heard the other day actually was from Satya Nadella. He said that this quantum computing is the closest we've come to replicating nature. So think about all the complexity of a plant that's happening inside of that. It seems like a simple thing, but there's a lot of chemicals and a lot of physics going on inside of that. That's what we're building in a quantum computer. And there's been a few developments here. So the picture on the top there is Microsoft's latest Manjaro chip they put out is actually their idea of a quantum computer. It's actually some pretty cool videos about that online. I recommend you go read it. They're essentially creating new matter to make this computer work. The other picture there on the bottom left is actually not the quantum computer itself. It's actually the refrigerator used to get it so it's cool enough so the actual matter can function and stably. Yeah, it's really wild. And I think that one they had at the Microsoft office is they call it the coldest place on Earth. Because it has to be so cold to make this like negative 200 Kelvin or something crazy. And I put this other picture on here because I want to kind of give you an idea of the sort of pathway we're looking at here. And that computer is called the ENIAC. It was made in 1946 at UPenn. And it's that entire room, and it's taller, twice the height of that guy standing in front of it there. Maybe they were shorter back in those days, but it could process 5,000 calculations a second. Of subtraction and addition, not multiplication. That drops significantly. But that's how slow it was. So your phone in your pocket right now can do like 100 million times more than that, for example. And the idea I want to impress on you here today is that quantum computing is an order of magnitude larger than that change, right? It's going to change the way we process information. But the key is, though, it can't do everything. It's not going to be just some supercomputer you're going to have in your pocket. It really is good at large data set problems. So chemistry, pharmaceuticals, think about the encryption, like we said, but think about the other potential security implications of that. So now I want to talk a little bit about the risks coming into play. So the first one here is encryption is going to break, right? Our digital trust mechanisms we have are not going to be the same when this becomes a much more mature capability. Algorithms like RSA or elliptical curve cryptography, which are probably used everywhere that you work today, are going to be completely broken. There's other ones as well, but those are the main ones being used. There's this concept of harvest now, decrypt later, which is happening as well. This is another kind of big area of risk that a lot of attackers or adversaries are taking all the data and storing it and waiting for the day that quantum computing comes out so they can actually decrypt it themselves. So all this data is encrypted. It's safe from our perspective right now, but in the future, they'll be able to decrypt it. So think about, you don't know, but you're having a security incident right now because it's going to happen in 10 years, right? Maybe you still won't work at the same place. We are security people. We move around quite a bit. But that's the idea, is that they'll take it and harvest it later. Exponential attack power. So not only will it be able to break encryption, but it'll be able to do it really fast. And I don't think we have really begun to understand the actual applications of quantum computing yet. That's something I've been trying to wrap my head around, especially as I'm here to talk to you all today. Like, what are we really going to be able to do with this once it's available to us? And what is that crazy programming language going to look like? But then how is it going to be able to be used in ways we haven't even thought of yet? Because that's what a processor is really about, is how do you do more kind of different kinds of computing and build more applications on top of it. A lot of the ones we understand now, because it's mostly driven by science, is things like pharmaceuticals or nature, or replicating nature, or these heavy mathematical solutions, but what else is there, right? We don't know yet how they're going to be used. And what I have, a lot of the discussion I have heard is how you use it in conjunction with a classical computer, right? Because classical computing is really good at a lot of things, right? We're mostly satisfied with the work we're getting out of it today, but imagine that now with quantum computing. And I've even been thinking more and trying to not, trying to sleep at night, so don't think about it too much, is how AI and quantum computing are going to work together in the future as well. Because once they have that power to make decisions on their own, and then the ability to process massive amounts of data, what's that really going to look like? And then the last piece, and this is because I work in product security, but I think it will impact everyone else, is that it's going to require a massive overhaul of your systems, right? You're going to have to replace encryption on your authentication systems, on your digital trust you have in place, any certificates you have running out there. It's going to have to shift that dramatically. We'll talk a bit more in a few minutes here about what that really means and how you can kind of take advantage of the knowledge you're getting today. There's a lot happening here, right? We're at a real intersection of technological change, and one of the things I've thought about a bit more is like there hasn't been a technological change like this since the internet, and this is really going to shift how we have to change and think. So there are a few, all that bad news aside, I did my best, and that's kind of why I balance it this way, not to talk about all the negative stuff, right? Where if you work in security, that's kind of where you live your life, is on the side of risk all the time. So I really want to start thinking a bit more about the upsides of these technologies. And from quantum computing, there are a few, and still, like I said, we don't really understand all the capabilities yet, but this is what I've kind of picked apart so far. There is quantum safe cryptography coming out. NIST just last August released 3 documents to kind of give some of their standards they're putting in place. And even I read the other day that Cloudflare, I think who's here actually, is starting putting quantum safe computing on some of their endpoints as well already. Quantum safe cryptography, pardon my. So it's already starting to come, and people are already starting to think about it, right? As the need starting to arise. And like I said before, quantum-powered threat detection. I really think this is going to be where, as security professionals, we get the real benefit. Being able to process these vast amounts of data, looking for the tiniest, smallest little anomaly, and be able to detect that and move forward is going to be really great for us. And I think the vendors or the solution providers who take care of that for us, it's going to be a huge value for a lot of large organizations. I'm imagining in the beginning it'll be things like NSA or these large companies that do that, but eventually it will be, pocket size, just like our phone, so we can use it in our own organizations. And the last one, and this is really a key, I think, to how quantum functions, that is going to change the real game for us. It's called quantum key distribution. And so quantum has this really wild property that quantum qubits, I guess I would say, have this really wild property that actually, if you observe the qubit, it actually changes the value of it. And so imagine a scenario where you're sending a key to another party to say, hey, this is my quantum encrypted data. Here's my information. Come look at it. But it's observed in the middle by somebody. When it gets there, you'll actually be able to detect that it was observed. So you can build some mechanism in place there to be able to use that and leverage that. So I think again, we're still starting to understand this, but there's a lot of opportunity coming with quantum computing that we can take advantage of as security professionals. This one is, I think, one of the keys as well. So this, pardon me, I keep touching the mic. So this is where we get a little bit more practical. A little time check here. How are we doing? Okay. And I give you a few of the areas, at least what I'm thinking about. Again, this is all my own opinion and kind of researched on my own. And this, again, is also about the future. So this is just what I'm kind of doing to help to protect my organization and hopefully sharing with you also what's useful. So the first thing, and I can't stress this enough, is that you really need to have your teams and organizations starting to develop AI expertise. Really start understanding what the tools are that are out there, how they can be used, how they're being used by others, and what are the different communication technologies that are coming along and all different ways they're able to use and leverage data. And this is something I've been trying to shove down my team's throat for the past 3 or 4 months, difficultly. So this is something I'll actually warn you, is that there is a lot of resistance coming from people actually embracing AI. I mean, there's probably some fear about it replacing your jobs, or just there's a lot of uncertainty about it. And so I think that's going to be a real challenge to push this, but it is absolutely crucial that we do this, right? We have to develop this expertise. The second is data and privacy. This is always one of the big cases, and a lot of organizations, this is what your kind of risk when it comes to financial, implications really means is if you are to lose this data and you have some fine from a privacy regulatory side, what does that really mean? And then you lose a lot of trust. I think Den was up here earlier, mentioned that his data's been lost so many times he doesn't care anymore, but I think it's still, even though it doesn't really impact you so much because everyone here has lost their data, I'm sure at least once, but that you still lose trust in that company, right? I think there's still a sense that, okay, they were hacked, they lost all my data, I'm not really happy with that. So being able to make sure we're protecting that and having that governance wrapper around that, one, to protect the business and keep the customer trust, but two, is also to ensure that there's no regulatory implications. I mentioned this earlier, but threat modeling, again, one of my favorite tools used in security, but AI-specific threat modeling, right? As we understand these different types of vulnerabilities or attack surfaces, like how is the attack surface of your organization really changing, your application really changing? And what does that really mean? And what are the ways you're going to be able to understand that and protect against that, right? It's really going to be a little bit more complex in the beginning, but I'm imagining there'll be some frameworks that come out that help you assess these. And actually, there is one at the end, which we'll talk about. And I said it, but you can ignore that. And just using it as a concept is the adopting zero trust for AI. I know that word's been slandered quite a bit, but the idea here is that we're limiting access that AI has, limiting access to the AI, or how do you really control that and manage it? I mean, we all know that AI wants access to everything to be able to function properly, and you can extract a lot of value out of that if it can access everything. But is that what you really need for the business? Is there a way to make sure we're protecting it and minimizing it enough to ensure that it's not going to overwhelm or become, minimizing the blast radius if something does kind of happen, right? Another one, and this is more from the product side, but it may impact any kind of the other enterprise business, is evaluating the reverse engineering risks. So your security capabilities, your communication protocols, or how your product is built, that moat you may have because of the complexity of it is going to shrink, like I said before. So I work in medical device, and we make an insulin pump, right? And that insulin pump is on people. And if that's attacked, somebody actually dies. And so I have to make sure that all of the capabilities that I've built into that to protect that patient remain secret or remain effective, right? Even in the face of this kind of reverse engineering capability. And again, the hard things are going to become easier, right? The concept of script kiddies has got a whole new meaning now with the capabilities that people are going to have. And the last point I want to get to is, I put it last, not because it's the least important, but it's because something we all need to think about, and this is another part of the changing world, the regulations. The EU put out one recently. There's probably more coming from the US as the political landscape shifts, and we need to think about how we're going to be aligning with those compliance requirements as time moves on here. And it's going to be complicated, right? This world is changing. The AI world is changing very fast, and I'm sure that their compliance requirements will lag, but when they do catch up, we need to be ready for them. So it's something to keep an eye on. Okay, preparing for quantum is not quite in depth because it's not really here quite yet, but it is something that you need to start now just because of the long-term impacts of it. And so I made a little sequence here to help understand that. So the first one is going back and inventorying the encryption you have across your organization, especially paying attention to where you have RSA or elliptical curve cryptography, making sure you have that noted and marked so something you're going to have to take care of in the near future. The second is about your third parties, right? And this is where it gets a little bit more nebulous because you probably have a lot of third parties, as every company does. And especially look for especially the ones that are critical to your business, right? Critical to your operations. They have a lot of your sensitive data, or they are particularly risky. Make sure you're speaking with them and talking with them about their plans for managing this managing the quantum-resistant cryptography. And you want to understand what they actually have, so you do know if they're going to put some plans in place or not. Thirdly, you want to risk rank that. So this is really starting to see where is in those critical aspects of your business that are using this kind of cryptography you're going to want to change. Where do you have the most exposure? And another one I like to think about is where do you have data or systems with the most longevity, right? The ones that are, some people may have a business here where you send something to a customer, it sits there for 10 years. And how are you going to make sure you protect that system over the next 10 years? I know a lot of things have connectivity, but is it even possible to update your cryptography over the air, or how are you going to manage this, right? So start thinking about those long-lived systems and how you're going to deal with them, because I'm imagining it's going to be 5 to 10 years before some real mature quantum cryptography comes into place, but you have to be prepared for it. So that's the idea here. And then the last one is, again, I keep saying it, I'm a broken record here, but quantum resistant threat modeling. Like, how do you start thinking about your systems and where quantum computing can impact you? Right now, hopefully I gave you some of the information you can use to formulate that a bit more and help you understand how you're going to simulate these potential attacks and how you're going to protect your systems. And again, this is not exactly you can walk away and start doing this today. It's really about how you start thinking about these different attack vectors. So a key here, though, is, and this is kind of what I spoke to earlier, is that you really have to start embracing these technologies. You can't fear them, right? If you just keep and hide it away, like a lot of my teams, the teams or the companies I work with have been doing, I'm seeing them kind of fear away from or shy away from it. You can't do that. You have to keep moving forward, right? And a key to doing that is making sure your team is learning and growing and adapting, right? You have to keep the training going. You have to keep evolving and understanding these new ways of looking at the attack vectors and the adversaries and how they're using it. The second piece then is that as they learn and grow and shape themselves, you have to realize that these things are not necessarily threats. They're also the tools that you can use to protect your business, right? You can, there's the concept of the 10x engineer. I mean, maybe you all have heard that, maybe not, but it's really someone who's extremely highly productive in your company, and everyone wants to have those people in their groups. But if you actually were able to 10x productivity and consistency of your whole team, you can do a lot more with a lot less. I think Den said it earlier that budgets are going down and expectations are going up. This is a way to counteract that, is by using these tools, to take advantage of these tools to create more productivity in your team. And then the last one here is encouraging you to work with your business, work with developers, work with IT, work with all the different partners you have, even your third parties, to ensure that they're forward thinking about this kind of stuff, right? That they're thinking about how they're going to protect your vendors, or how you're going to protect your systems, or how they're going to leverage them in their areas. The key to that last thing I just said is that I'm starting to see a lot of the groups across my company leverage AI in different ways. And it's like, what I feel like I have to do is parachute in and make sure, okay, how are we protecting all of this, right? What's the risk you're introducing by starting to use this tool? And so encouraging that communication and that sort of cross-disciplinary interaction is going to be a real key to making sure that you're prepared and your company's prepared for the future. And the last bit here is that don't wait, right? You really need to start thinking about this now, and that's why I'm trying to give you a framework to start thinking. And really considering how this is going to be done. I don't have the magic recipe, and I don't really know what's going to change in the next year, but really start figuring out how to prioritize your risk. And the key here is building governance around all these capabilities, making sure that you do have some semblance of control over your company. They can't just run wild with this. You have to have some semblance of control. And I've been starting to do this myself, and it is quite challenging, but it is what you have to do. Another piece here is that if you have the capability and you have the knowledge, your company can really go forward and say, look, we've taken care of all this uncertainty you're worried about. We're already taking care of all this risk. And so it can become like a competitive advantage if you really become a trusted partner, not only to your customers, but to your actual partners themselves. And the last key I want you to walk away with here is that, and it says it right here, future-proof is a verb, right? It's not something you just become. You have to continually act and behave in this way. And that means constant training, constant learning, adapting, getting your organization to kind of come along for the ride. And that, again, I'll say it, we're at this kind of shift, I think, not just in the whole global landscape around technology, but in security especially. We're really starting to shift the way we have to think, because the world is moving fast and all these new technologies are coming, and we have to kind of play along with them, using them and adapting to protecting them. So a few resources we have here. Please take a picture and look at this. There's a lot of interesting areas to go on. The NIST AI Risk Management Framework, I said, is a great way to help you structure your governance programs, right? Really start thinking about what is it we need to do in our organization, and gives you a really nice place to do it. The second is the OWASP AI Exchange. I'm actually a huge fan of OWASP being in application and software development and product security. We use a lot of the thought that comes out of that organization is extremely useful. So I really recommend you go on that AI exchange, and it's really a lot more technical, but it does give you some areas to think about, and you can see how the conversation is shifting over time. On the quantum side, I have a couple of resources. One is the IBM Introduction to Quantum Safe Cryptography, a great place to get started. Again, it will bend your mind a bit in a few ways, like physics typically does, but it is great to start to understand what that really means. And then I mentioned earlier the NIST documents they were put out back in August. They gave 3 standards that kind of start the conversation, at least give their first take on quantum safe cryptography. It's still a bit in development, but I think we're getting a start in place now. And the idea is that the new cryptography is also safe in classical computing, not just quantum. All right. So this is time for questions. My LinkedIn's here if you want to communicate with me after any questions I can't answer. But please ask. And I want this to be, tell me about what you're thinking about and from your organizations, and really what does uncertainty look like for you, and how are you thinking about dealing with it? So, yeah, go ahead. Oh, sorry, he's got a mic for you here.
First, I want to thank you. Really very thought-provoking and intriguing presentation about what's coming in the future. Mm-hmm. And I especially am happy to see that you emphasized cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary research and work to really bring all sorts of expertise to the table, and that will be the key. Mm-hmm. But one question that they have, you had somewhere about quantum threat modeling, and you're talking about simulating quantum attacks. And I'm wondering how you could do it before you have a quantum computing machine to do it, because there's no way to simulate that kind of attack on the hardware that we have right now. Mm-hmm. So how you can make it realistic that will work?
Good question. And I think I warned at the beginning that a lot of this is theoretical, the conversation here. It's a little bit ambitious topic, but the idea behind that is that you're thinking about it, right? You start to simulate from like a thought exercise more than an actual one itself. I can imagine the beginnings of quantum. Once there are mature, processors available, it'll be ridiculously expensive, right, to use them. And so I cannot imagine that you'll be able to test these things in real life. But threat modeling is a thought exercise, right? You're kind of thinking about it on the table, how this will really work. And I think the challenge, and the reason I put it kind of at the end, was that it is kind of out in the future. We don't really understand how quantum is going to work yet, or what its real capabilities will be in the context of cybersecurity, right? And so the idea is that start thinking about these and kind of building into, okay, when we're building a new product, we're building a new system, is there any risk we have here once quantum is available that we should take on? And it's probably more currently around encryption, but in the future, what is it going to look like? Right? I can imagine if they build some DDoS capability with a quantum computer, it would just level like AWS, right? So how can we even begin to threat model that kind of thing, right? So good question, but it's really, my answer is it's a thought exercise.
Hi, I'm a IT auditor, and it's going to be like a twofold question. So first one, who should be responsible for evangelizing AI? Should it be the CISO? Should it be GRC, risk and compliance? Should it be the CIO? And second, as an IT auditor, what are some of the things that we should be looking at to kind of reduce or kind of be comfortable with these AI risks? Because every tool has been putting out their own AI tool, right? But then you have Microsoft AI, a Copilot, right? And stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So want to see your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So the first question was about evangelizing AI. And that's a tricky one, right? It depends on your organization. But I think the first two you mentioned were the more risk-averse sides of the business, right? Like it was, you said the CISO and and GRC, right? But they're the more risk averse, typically not looking to expand use of AI, where a CIO may be looking to do that. So I think it really depends on your business. What I found in my company is that I actually partner with the CIO and the CTO. We have kind of different roles because of our business model, but we all are kind of partnering together to evangelize this. And the thing I found is that if you want your company to take on and start to use AI and get those productivity gains that we're all being promised here, then it actually helps to come from one of the more risk-averse parts of the business, right? So what I've found is that a lot of the groups come to me to get me to kind of approve the use of it, or at least say, hey, that's a good idea, because I am the one who at least understands the risk of the business itself, and so I can help. My sort of stamp of approval goes a lot longer than someone looking to just run away with these new technologies. So that's the kind of, hope that answers your question. The second part, I would point you to that last resource about the NIST AI framework. But the way I'm starting to think about it is we're ranking our different usage of AIs in kind of tiered levels. And so like a tier 0 is if we have customer data, which in my organization, we have a lot of protected health information, so I have to be very sensitive with that. And then tier 1, it's some kind of business or financial impact, and then yada, 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 as that kind of goes down. That's one way I'm starting to think about it. But that risk AI framework will help you build out a little bit more of your own model for your own business and how that really works. Hope that answered. Great question. Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jacob, for a great presentation. So I'm going to go to the boring topic, but I want to know, how are you doing in your organization? So our developers are using AI to code, and they were telling me how much time they save for writing test cases and whatnot. We have all kinds of scanning tools, static and dynamic code scanning tool. Okay, so my thoughts, because I used to be a developer, is make sure you write secure code when you get into the production. You can run your whatever, your tests and stuff, but with AI, people just copy and paste and whatever works, right? I mean, it shows up what you want. So I wanted to know, because I'm pretty sure you're coming from a developer background, how are you doing this in your organization to ensure that your developers, the code they go to the production is secure? I mean, on top of that, we'll all do the scanning thing. I know that. I mean, we all do that. But I wanted to hear your thoughts.
Yeah. So great question. Actually, it's something I've been thinking about a bit more recently. We're a medical device manufacturer. So every single PR that comes in gets reviewed by a person. So that's the step one. And part of the review, depending on the change to the whatever component, is reviewed by I have product security team who specializes in that. So that's the way I've been handling it, which is absolutely manual and absolutely against that, productivity slide, which I was talking about. But that's medical device for you. It's like overly complex and highly regulated. The tools, I think, is the other best way, but I don't really have a solution for it yet. But one of the things I'm starting to see in how they're building out this sort of agentic AI is that you have a piece of an AI system that you use to write the code, then you have one that checks the code as well. It specializes in that as well. So it does give you that same productivity, but as a security professional, you need to verify that's working appropriately, right? And maybe do some spot checking here and there. But that's the kind of idea that I've seen, is that to prevent these hallucinations, or at least this very, very, I'm sure it just ingested all of Stack Overflow and all of the poorly secured code there. To prevent that, you have another model that's trained to look at code securely, and that hopefully that kind of, maybe somebody in the room could make one, but hopefully that's kind of coming along for us to be able to use shortly. Because right now it is, yeah. I talk a big game, but my company is still dragging. Like medical devices dragging. I'm trying to drag them into the future. So, yeah. No more questions?
Yes, we have another question from a viewer. And Michael asks, how is your company preparing for the impact of quantum computing on AI-driven security?
That's a loaded question there. It sounds like how are we preparing for the impacts of quantum computing on AI-driven security? So I guess the scenario is that AI is using RSA encryption, right, potentially to secure some of our communication channels. We're not, right, is the answer to that currently, right? I'm starting to think about, right, how we're going to One of the challenges I have is that our device we use is an embedded device. So like a small little pump someone's kid wears on their belts and has an infusion set into their skin and gives them insulin when they, when they eat a nice meal like you all just ate. And it is a long-lasting device. It's called durable medical equipment, lasts at least 4 to 5 years, and it has very, very low processing power. So I'm starting to think about how are we going to, and it uses elliptical curve cryptography. So I'm starting to think about how are we going to protect that and what's the new algorithm we're going to put in place there. So I'm really thinking about it from that base level currently. When it comes to AI systems, the security is still being written, right? And a lot of the challenges we're all going to face, and kind of what I was trying to highlight here, was that the book is still being written. We don't really know what the future holds for us, and to be able to prepare for it is still just kind of learning and adapting game currently. Hope that answers the question.
Another viewer, Charles, asks, how will we access quantum computers' capability? Will it be hosted, say, at Microsoft, Amazon, Google Cloud? And will we apply that to encrypt our critical data files and data streams?
I would imagine so, right? I think, and the question was, about hosting quantum computing. In the next 10 to 15 years, likely it'll all be hosted. I mean, all of us must use cloud computing pretty dramatically at our companies now, and even for AI, it's all cloud hosted currently as well. I know Jensen Huang just gave a pretty good speech about the new hardware he's building, but probably most of us aren't really buying that, right? We're also using those cloud-based systems. I would imagine the same thing for quantum, is that it will certainly, given that picture I showed with a freezer, no one's going to have a negative 200 degree Kelvin, fridge sitting in their data centers, right? I can imagine the power it takes to keep that thing running must be astronomical. But eventually the technology will improve, right? As we see with everything over time, the technology will get better where it will be, I don't know if it'll be able to have it in our phones, in our pockets, but it will get smaller where we can actually have access to it, I would say.
Yeah, I'm from Open Power Foundation, which is actually originally funded by.
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Yeah.
Which is originally funded by IBM.
Okay.
10 years ago. I just want to know your viewpoint on open source quantum computing and your company.
Sorry, what was the
open source? The stack. What is that available in quantum computing? Open source.
Open source quantum? You
Yeah,
saying?
yeah.
Okay.
Anything available right now?
Not that I'm aware of. Right. I would recommend you go kind of look at IBM has a great, it's your company, right? They have a great video on describing it, but there's not really a lot available to us quite yet. I mean, I know there's a quantum programming language, there's a kind of architecture they're building, and even I would say I think IBM has a quantum computer they're working on, but Microsoft, they're completely different architectures, right? You remember back in the days of Motorola, like in the chips that Apple used versus Intel, kind of how this all kind of played out. There's that game is still happening on the quantum side yet. They haven't figured out which technology is going to be the x86, right, of the computing world.
Yeah, the reason is actually always, the big companies like IBM or Microsoft, while they are working on a commercial product, they also work with, the open source momentum and, try to open source and develop the skills, among the communities.
Yeah.
So that commercially, they will later on, support it and, provide.
Yeah, I think now I understand your question a bit better now. So like the example of with AI, like Facebook or Meta is releasing a llama, right? Llama models. Same kind of idea. I think it's so far in the future, they're not ready for that yet, right? Okay. You can't even you wouldn't be able to get in. They're still doing so much research on it. There's no available processing to even try to use those models. So I'm imagining once it gets closer to being commercially viable, they'll then start releasing these open source models and probably starting with like universities and things, right? Yeah. Or pharmaceutical companies to give them access to it in the beginning. Yeah. Great question though, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
We've been talking about this, and I think there's an existence of quantum virtual machines. These things are in existence, and you can get them online and rent them. But thinking about it, why not put something like a limiter or some sort of request like pause on top of these things so you can't exercise the power of 1 billion teraflops a second? Why not just slow it down? Like, have people thought about this as a simple approach? Is like, we're just going to make sure that it doesn't have that kind of requests? Or is it all about certificate replay? I can do a certificate replay faster than someone else. There's like real specific use models that are kind of questions that I have inside of this conversation.
Yeah, that's a great. And I was thinking about this while you were talking too. Is that I think you've all been part of a security team where you've been, hey, you're slowing down the business, right? And that's like an exact example of how, like, okay, we want to be secure about it, and I completely understand. We want to constrain that, but again, why not use the power, right? Why not be able to replicate nature, or solve this problem about how to cure cancer, right? And so slowing it down would actually stop that kind of forward-looking momentum, right? That we want to take advantage of. That's kind of a shift I've had personally in my career, is that as I got into product security, I stopped thinking about how I stop progress. I started thinking about how I support it securely, right, and compliantly. And so that's kind of a different shift away. I think that's a good idea, and there maybe will be some ways that we actually have to limit the capability, especially when it's used in an attack scenario. But you got to think about, okay, limiting is one option, but what are the other options we have, right? Like things like quantum safe computing or the key distribution, or other ways we can actually take advantage of it and not have to worry about the attacks coming from quantum, but we've built this other mechanism that can actually protect us effectively. And so that mind shift, that kind of shift in the mindset is going to have to happen for us to kind of move forward with this. But good thought, yeah.
Do we have any other questions? We still have about 8 minutes. Okay, we do.
Oh.
I'll take both these questions. There's one here and one over here.
Are a large portion of organizations putting policies in place not to use Chinese models like DeepSeek and Tencent? And I mean, are they ahead of that, or are they catching up as these developments are happening?
I already put things in place to not use those, right? Like we observed this. It's talking a little bit out of school here, but we observed like the day after it was released, half of my R&D team accessed it right from their work laptops, right? And then the day after we told them not to do that, like half of that still accessed it again, right? So we had to take some steps to block it, and it's not really that I think it's going to be dangerous or I think it's going to impact us or expose us in some way. It's that there's a lot of uncertainty around it, and the whole world was talking about how dangerous it was. So instead of just okay, no, it's fine for us, and I completely understand all the risk, we actually just took the steps to block it. That being said, I think that I did have to spend some time with my organization, kind of saying, look, DeepSeek, the chat itself is kind of dangerous, but the actual model itself, if you download it and use it yourself, is actually quite useful, right? The chat model itself has a lot of the Chinese Communist Party kind of layers on it that make it a little bit unusable for the US, but the actual model itself, you can run it locally, and it's much lower, computationally, not as much computational power is required to run that model. So you can actually do a lot in-house with that kind of thing. So it's a little bit of a balance, and I think that's a great point. You go back to where I think it's very important for us to gain that expertise. So when these risks or these new changes do come up, we can speak to it, adequately to the business to say, look, here's where our risks exist, here's what steps we're taking, and here's where we're going to let things slide. Yeah, great question.
So I have a question here. So a couple months ago, Google's quantum chip, I believe it's called Willow.
Yeah.
They took it offline because there's speculation, right? That it found something that they want to keep under wraps, or they wanted to make sure that they understood the results. Very intriguing. Just a lot of food for thought there.
Mm-hmm. What do you speculate it was?
Haven't done enough research, but the little bit that I've encountered, what if it creates an unbreakable encryption algorithm that if it falls under the wrong hands, it could have very negative consequences.
Or positive ones,
or
right?
Positive
you
ones,
could use it
depending
unbreakable.
on which hands.
We could make it easier to do business in a lot of adversarial countries, right? If we have unbreakable encryption, right? So, but that's interesting. I'll look into that more. I heard about it, but I didn't really dig into that one. I used the Manjaro example because it's pretty cool that it fits in your hand like that. Got it.
More question over here? It's,
We got a little bit of time left.
yeah, we still have time.
So, I guess for keeping time short, have you read about the Matthew Van Andel at Disney?
No, I did not.
Okay, so this was a Disney engineer who is trying to be an AI engineer on his home PC with GPUs. And he accessed a repository on GitHub that had already been infected. And it escalated on his machines to keylogging his 1Password, which had everything that Disney was under his premise. And with a very short time period, they were exfiltrating data from Disney. So understanding this in the strategy of you've had a focus group, you've had a strategy meeting, you're developing a committee or a working group, you're going to invest in AI in your organization. So you're going to invest in that GPUs on premise or hosted in the cloud in a private cloud or whatever your invest is. You're talking about investing in training. You're talking about investing in support and security somewhere, hopefully. How do you address unmanaged devices for all this encouraged development of AI so that everyone can put on their Iron Man suits and be a better engineer and not be replaced by somebody else who's an AI engineer that's up and coming?
Yeah, I mean, you hit on a lot of points I talked about earlier, right? Having the knowledge and capability to understand what is even happening. So I'm guessing he downloaded some training model that he could use.
He had his L.
Okay. Wow. Okay, I'll look it up. One of the things you said though is unmanaged endpoint. Like I don't allow those on my network, so that's one key. But again, you're speaking to the one of the real things I touched on earlier is this unmanaged risk, third-party risk. Right? We don't even can't even begin to understand what the capability is here. Right? And that was a simple downloading a malicious file from GitHub, running it, maybe it gets access to the model they're developing, which has all of Disney's proprietary information in it, and now they can exfiltrate all of that information, right, really quickly. So, like I said, I think you're talking in the right direction, though, building these governance capabilities, but really building the understanding and the ways you're going to have to protect this. And another thing I'm trying to think about, and I said it a little bit earlier, is building this kind of tiered model of how you assess and how you manage the risk of these new LLMs coming in. So. I think that's it, right, Kim? Are we all done?
Yeah, I think we're at time.
Thank you all very much. It's a pleasure talking to you.